Well, photography to me is everything I see essentially. I'm always on the lookout for photographs, and my life wouldn't be the same if I didn't have photography in it. I think just whenever I'm looking, I'm always looking out for potential subjects. I'm always basically got an eye out, and I think that's just come because I've been so ingrained in photography for such a long time. It's sort of how I see the world now. I see it in pictures or potential pictures. That's really exciting, and I think I see things differently than people who aren't photographers, and I think that's quite exciting.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.
John Alexander, thank you so much for joining me on Shooting It Raw. And we've never met before. And I love this. I love this. This is the best. Because I get to find out who you are and what makes you tick. And you send me three or four photographs that you made, and we kind of talk shop about it, and super excited. So lovely to speak to you. Now you're in London. Where are you right now?
I'm in Oxfordshire, just north of Oxford.
Okay. Oh, by the way, I'm an idiot. So if I ask a stupid question or I don't ask, I mean, most people who hear my interviews are just like, Rand, you have the weirdest way of interviewing people because, like I'll just talk for a while and then somebody says, was that a question? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know.
No, that's all good. All good.
Okay. So,
You know what Oxford is?
what?
Do you know where Oxford is?
I believe it's next to South Africa.
No.
Okay. Where's that?
So it's basically north of London.
Okay. Okay.
So it's about an hour north of London. So I can get down to London really quickly. But that's where I am, in the middle of the countryside.
Well, we will get to know all about you and your process, and we're going to get to know you. I'm going to get to know you. So as I'm talking to you right now, I'm looking at the first photo that you sent me. And usually what I do is I only open the photos as I start talking about them.
Okay.
Let's talk about your first photograph.
I can't remember which one I sent you first.
Okay, so let me describe it. Like in terms of the content of the image,
Yeah.
it looks like either the inside of a room where the paint is peeled off over years, or a fence where you have these like vertical brown wood. So there's no the perspective per se. There's no real perspective. Everything's it's a sharp image. It's in color. When I look at it, I think it kind of looks like a map of the world. That's kind of where my
Okay.
brain
So
goes.
I assume the one you're talking about has got green and blue in it, and there's like a brown from a door,
Yeah.
and that is essentially what I do. This is a photograph, a very high resolution photograph of a door in Taiyo in Hong
Oh
Kong.
wow. Okay.
Um, so they're almost meant to look like an abstract
Mm-hmm.
painting, but obviously they're not abstract. They're of a subject, but that subject is only known to me. And for a long time, I thought that I would go down that abstract route where the viewer doesn't know what it is, so it becomes a complete abstract.
Mm-hmm.
But I've discovered that people are interested in how I took the photograph, where it is, what it is. So now I've sort of revealed what the photograph actually is,
Mm-hmm.
because then people can relate to it a bit more.
Sure.
But I really wanted it to be like this abstract image, but it is really fun telling the stories because each photograph has got a story, and that's what I have come to appreciate, that people want to know that story behind it.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I know it. So it's a door in Tai O, and I know that Tai O is in Hong Kong. That
Yeah.
immediately raises the question of, what's your connection to Hong Kong?
I grew up in Hong Kong. My mum is Chinese, and my sister still lives there, and all my mother's side still live in Hong Kong.
Okay.
So I go back there, every 2 or 3 years, minus a pandemic. So yeah, I absolutely love Hong Kong, and this is I've always photographed Hong Kong. I've filmed in Hong Kong, and this is a new-ish project to me, that I go into the depths of Hong Kong itself and try and photograph, the details of Hong Kong, the little quirks, rather than what I used to do as a slightly wider shots, taking photos of the Star Ferry, and I love doing all that storytelling. But you can still do storytelling just within an abstract image,
Yeah.
and that's something I've got more and more interested in.
I love that. I started this podcast and I get to meet people such as yourself. And I just want to go back into this image because, again, so now I know for a listener, they have the frame of reference, a door with
Yeah,
some wooden slats. And it's like, okay, hold on. So the wood
yeah,
is probably a good 60 or 70 years old.
yeah,
And it's been painted over, as you can see. About half of the paint on this wood has withered away. The wood itself looks quite textured and old, and it's this nice rich brown. And you can just see a gap between the vertical slats of the door, where there's one little, the composition is perfect. It's really beautiful, and you could see the layers of paint on it. And if you look at it with your crystal sharp, clear, sharp vision, it's so sharp, and it's so. I mean, you could, on a good monitor, it's like you could see all these incredible colors, and it's really beautiful. And like I said, it's like it almost looks like, to me, it almost looks like a map of continents
yeah.
where you have.
I like that. That's really interesting. How different people interpret the image,
Uh huh.
um, and what people see in the image. I think that's really interesting.
I
And
see a massive vagina as well, but that's a different story.
yeah, yeah. Well, I've got another one that does look like a vagina, but
Okay.
I
Okay.
thought it was. So yeah, I haven't put that into my portfolio. I only realised it after I took it.
Okay. No, but listen. So like, just as a visual experience, right? So I imagine that. Like, so have you ever printed this photo?
Yeah, so that's what they're for. Really, they're not for the screen. They're to be printed. And I've got one literally next to me here, which is 1.5 meters in size. So I take the photographs in a specific way, so that there's lots of sort of photographic techniques that we could come onto if your listeners are interested. But in order to make it so sharp, right from the middle of the image to the right and to the corners, so that it can be blown up absolutely massive and have it on a
Uh
wall,
huh.
like a really big centerpiece in someone's room. That's what they're for. That's what I've all of the sort of photographic techniques goes into making this huge print with
Hmm.
exquisite detail. Yeah,
It's totally exquisite, and I mean, I can totally see this. So, for example, in an office building or whatever, where you normally have some artworks, or in a gallery or everything, you can imagine these large prints or canvases, sure. And then the fact that it's photographic and it's so sharp, and your subject, and as you say, like, you obviously have the technical ability to really get this really incredible image. So when you made this photograph, clearly your camera's on a tripod,
yeah.
and you're probably, from my I would say, your lens is something like a 50 millimeter, and you're shooting from about 2 or 3 meters away.
I like it. Very, very impressive. Yeah. It's actually a bit more than that. So it's about 70 or 80 millimeters, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And essentially, what you don't want, is to have any sort of distortion in the image. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't shoot this on a wide angle lens.
Mm-hmm.
You need to compress that perspective, and also you need to be completely directly level to the surface, because that
Mm-hmm.
again means that all the vertical lines are straight. You've got as much depth of field as possible, so you can get everything sharp in the image.
Mm-hmm.
And Also, it's something called image stacking. It's getting a bit geeky now. I
No,
do.
no. Hey, geek out, geek out.
Oh, right, cool. You're great. Yeah, so I also do something called image stacking, which essentially means that I'm focusing on different parts of the image, and then in Photoshop you blend them all together, so you get the depth of field all around the image completely sharp.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you can sort of do that in one image, but it means that you're going to sort of the end range of your lens.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a lot softer if you do that. So like f22, if you do something on that like that, it's much softer. So I prefer to shoot on like f8 where that's the sharpest part of your lens, and then
Mm-hmm.
focus stack on the parts of the image, and then blend them all together, and then you get a really high definition image on the
Yeah.
best part of your lens, and obviously a huge megapixel camera as well.
So sorry if I'm interrupting. I'm just so excited. The previous guest on the show on the podcast, he does macro photography, and
Mm,
he's so close to these insects that are tiny, they're the size of a blueberry,
yeah,
that he does the stacking in terms of the focus because it's so small, he's so close, and so he'll combine like 4 images to get one insect in focus. So it's
yes,
yeah.
it's very similar to that. I mean, with macro photography, you almost have to do it because
Mm-hmm.
your lens cannot have I can't get the amount of depth of field that you need
Mm-hmm.
uh, to do it. And with mine, you essentially could potentially just photograph a wall, and it'll probably be okay. But you start to see all the imperfections when you print
Yeah.
it up so big. So
Yeah.
that's why I have to be really pernicious about how I photograph it. I'm there for a good 15 minutes
Right.
photographing essentially a door.
Right. Are you shooting raw or are you shooting?
Shooting raw on a Nikon D850 with, I think it's got 47 megapixels or something.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So yeah, it has to be all raw. But actually, weirdly, I don't actually do much processing to the image. I it's part of what I just feel that I prefer to photograph what I'm looking at rather than trying to process it on a computer. I mean, yeah, of
Right.
course, I need to do some sharpening. I need to do some contrast because usually I'm photographing it again, getting extremely geeky. I'm photographing, so I'm extracting the most amount of information from the file,
Yeah.
which means it usually looks very flat. It's very
Mm-hmm.
bright, very flat, but what I'm doing is I'm extracting as much information from that that image as I possibly can, and then you put that in, obviously into Lightroom, and then you just like tweak it so you get
Yeah.
the most amount of detail and obviously the file size as well, which is needed.
Yeah. Like the podcast is called Shooting It Raw, and it's really about highlighting how people are spending their time, right? But obviously, photography is the doorway or the substructure or whatever we call it. So geek away, man. I love it.
Excellent. Okay, well, I can geek out all day. So
Okay, so wait, I've got a question. I've got a
okay.
real question. How did you get into photography?
Well, I started out photographing with my dad's camera, my dad's film camera in, where was that? In America when I was about 15, 16. And I literally didn't know anything about photography at this stage. He gave me this DSLR and I had some film to go in it, put all the film in. Eventually, after ruining a couple of films, literally didn't know anything. Got
Hmm.
to America, photographed all these things that I thought were good. I was told if you put it on manual, you get professional photographs. So put it on manual, whatever the setting was from the 20 years ago when he used it, and
Yeah.
photographed all these things. Obviously, it's on film, so you can't see what you're doing. And got back to I did it in Boots then, and processed all the images. Came out with I'm not joking, probably 200 or 300 photographs, all completely black.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it turned out I had just left it on manual on 8,000th of a second. So
Perfect.
you can imagine how many subjects are well exposed on 8,000th per second.
I need to make a little correction, just because when you started talking about it, you did refer to it as a DSLR, and I know this is just
Oh
a brain
yeah,
fart.
right.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but an SLR, not a
Yeah,
DSLR, an
that's
SLR.
right. It's been so long. Yeah.
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 No, dude, I love it. I love it. Okay, and so, but you also mentioned that you grew up in Hong Kong.
Yes.
When were you living in Hong Kong and like how did you sort of mature your photographic skill? Like how did that evolve from a kid who gets like a camera from his dad, takes
Yeah.
all these photographs, publishes like prints them, goes like, oh geez, there's nothing,
Yeah.
um, to where you are? Like how did you study photography? Did
No, so I studied geography in Exeter University, and it sort of stemmed from being at school and taking sort of the first sort of digital images with a compact camera, essentially. And I used to love doing that, and then went on my gap year and decided I would get a better camera. Did that, photographed amazing things all around the world, and that's sort of where it stemmed from, really. It actually started in landscape photography. You know, I did a lot of landscape photography and absolutely loved being outside and watching, you know, the weather roll in and waiting for that perfect moment when everything comes together. You know, you've got the light there, you've got the composition, and it's an amazing way to spend an afternoon. And I got really into that, but there's not really much money in landscape photography, or it's very difficult anyway. And I
mm-hmm.
love doing different types of photography. So you know, I do all sorts of photography. This is not just what I do. I do lots of other different bits as well. But I always find myself coming back to these textures, and I really want to make these textures work and you know, have them in the images, you know, all over the world, and that's what my passion essentially. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so from the start, I lived in Hong Kong when I was about 3 until about 8, and you know, photography really didn't come into it then. I was just living in Hong Kong because my dad had a job with Coca-Cola, so we sort of moved there, and then we came back to England when I was 8. And yeah, so my photography journey started when I was on literally on that trip to America when my dad gave me that film camera.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it started. I was like, oh, this is quite fun, and obviously enjoyed the process. And then I got the images back and they're all black. I was like, this is rubbish. But I did get one or two photographs. I got one photograph of a dolphin jumping out of the water, and at
Uh-huh.
the time, this is when I was about 17 and still at school. I thought that was the best photo ever taken by anyone.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is absolute genius. I'm amazing at photography. And credit to the teacher that I had at school. I saw it the other day, and it's terrible. It's out of focus. It's blur. The composition is awful. But at the time, I thought it was really good, and he encouraged me to go. Oh yeah, well done, John. That's really good. I think, you know, do this in the dark room. So I started out with the dark room,
Okay.
just for fun, really. I didn't really know what I was doing, but you know, that sort of caught my interest, and the fact that he said that my photo was good made me want to do it more, even though it was crap,
Uh-huh.
totally crap.
Well, you have to learn somewhere.
Well,
It's
exactly,
good.
exactly, and I think I don't know where I got this confidence from that I thought it was good, but
Ah, youth.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, just it's kind of went from there really, and you know, I had so much encouragement by all my friends and family, and yeah, it just sort of went from there. And then obviously I've got my business now, and I'm loving being a photographer and doing it my day.
Okay, hold on. I have to interrupt. You have your business. You love being a photographer. Is your business? Are you a professional photographer?
Yes, yes.
Ah, well, that says something. Okay, so pimp out, like sell your, like pimp out your business. Like, is it like, are you doing corporate photography? Are you doing nudes? Are you doing like photos of strawberries? What's your work?
Well, I do so many different types of photography. Essentially, you know, I would class myself as a lifestyle photographer. Probably, you know, I do weddings. I do lots of workshops. I teach people workshops. I'm obviously doing these evolving patina textures. I
Mm-hmm.
sell my travel images on stock websites and sell them for prints as well.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I do lots of different things, and I love doing that. I think
Hmm.
I couldn't just be a wedding photographer, or
Oh,
I
for sure.
couldn't just do corporate video. I do videography as well.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I've got a travel photography YouTube video, YouTube channel, and yeah,
Pump it. What's the name of your channel?
so it's sort of an adventure travel photography show that I do with one of my friends who's also a photographer, and it's called Photo Escapes.
Okay.
And that is essentially, think of Top Gear but with photography,
Nice.
and not quite as funny because we're not as funny as the three the three presenters. But that's essentially what I loved. I love cars anyway, and that was sort of what I loved and what I really wanted to do. And I thought, why don't I make this with a photography twist? And
Okay.
so we've done quite a few adventures, around the world. We've been to Sri Lanka, India, Ireland, London, loads of different places, and absolutely love filming those. So
You
that's where
see,
That's where I learned videography essentially in storytelling.
I'm beginning to suspect that you're a smarter version of me because I'm the one who comes up with a podcast about photography. So like put that in my pipe, I guess.
I'd love to do it.
Okay. Well, look. Let's go on to the next photograph because you've sent me 3 photographs and I could see the thumbnails and they're quite abstract.
Yeah,
So I love that of your body of work. That's what you've sent me, and I am going to put some screenshots from your. I think I have 2 websites of yours. Is that right?
yeah. You can see why I wanted to send you more than 3 photographs now, can't you?
Yeah. But listen. But in a way, what would happen if we only had one photograph, right? Like if this one image, I think you and I would still have a great conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's go on to the next photo, which is it's so good, so good. Okay, so okay. So in the image you sent me, you've actually put a white frame around it, or it's like the file or image actually has a white frame.
Okay.
So it just heightens the fact that it's more of an abstraction or an abstract sort of image or whatever it is. When I look at it, there is again, there's no frame of reference.
Yeah.
If the other image you could sort of see was a door with the slats and everything, here there is nothing recognizable. It's these very kind of futuristic, almost textured. It's this blue black splotches and splashes, and on it, it seems to be these. I don't know if it's on a white background or if it's white plaster that's been scratched. Like it's really, I mean, this is like looking at an abstract painting. But what am I looking at?
I assume this is the one with the pink in it.
No, this has no pink. This is only black, blue, white.
Black, blue, and white.
Is it blue? It's more like navy blue. It's really dark. It's
Oh,
like this is.
I see. Yeah. So that is, I think that was in Tayo as well. So I think that is that's the one of a canoe. So it's actually an old canoe,
Okay.
and I think that's the right one.
A very close cropped image of. Is it paint? I don't know if it's like scratched off paint or.
Is it like the splodgy sort of black and white one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it looks like almost like he's like a drip painting slash some. Yeah. I mean.
Okay, so I do know which one it is. Okay, so this photograph I took in Chesil Beach, which is in Dorset in England,
Oh,
and
okay.
and what it's amazing where you find these things. And water is something for me that I always gravitate towards because erosion and weathering happens much more quickly. So I usually go there to try and find these abstracts.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is actually a seat that has come off a dinghy. So it was in a boat essentially, and the seat that you sit on, that is what this is. It's like a close up
Mm-hmm.
of that.
Wow.
And what I loved about it is that again, there's no frame of reference at all. You would never know that was a seat.
This is your image, and we were like, "What is this of? I don't know. What is this of?"
It's abstract. It's abstract, man. You know
It's awesome. I
exactly.
love it.
Yeah. So essentially, it's a seat, and just again, it's done in exactly the same way. It is taken directly above it, and what I like about it is that it's just the shapes are there. There's composition in it. It's not just a random
Hmm.
shot of it. You've got a subject, which is that bit in the middle, and then you've got it all framed around with the black splodges.
Again, so for people who are listening, how do they get a frame of reference from how we're talking about it? And it's very difficult, right?
Oh,
And
really? Good.
so and in a way, but here's the thing. Okay, as you're talking and as I'm looking and as our brains can't help but create these like connections.
Yeah,
I see what looks like I mean, it's like looking at a cloud, I guess. I see what looks like a kind of a samurai warrior. Look, there's this Japanese feeling to the composition where
yeah,
there's like, it's like a Japanese warrior powering through like a blizzard, and within the dark patches, which is not quite black, and it's quite on the blue side,
mm,
it's got this really interesting texture, which is photographic, and maybe a mechanical process in painting could create this, but it does not look like an organic texture. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to convey what you're saying.
I should get you to write my captions. Yeah, that's cool. The whole thing, it's all done by accident, and that this splodge is just from where someone's been, painting tar or painting something on the boat that has splodged onto the seat, and then
Uh huh.
someone else has scraped it. That could have been a year later.
Yeah.
So the whole thing has its story. We just don't know what the story is, and
Right.
that what's so interesting about it is that you've just come up with essentially some splodges on a fishing boat as a samurai going through a snowstorm, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's exactly the sort of thing that I'm trying to do. I want people to make their own story up, and that's what's really
Right.
cool.
And again, printed like 1.5 meters by 1 meter or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Nice.
essentially, it's if you think about having a room that is, let's say, completely white, and you just want splashes of color or splashes of texture. That's what it's for. And you can either go with, I don't really care what story it has. I really like it as an image,
Hmm.
and you just put it up in your room, or you have the different type of person who like loves to read into the images,
Yeah.
and that's both ways are just equally as exciting to me. And when I take it, I don't see the story. I don't see any of that. All I'm seeing is composition and
Hmm.
and texture and where am I going to place my image, and technically I need to do X and Y in order to get this perfect.
How Where have you had your okay? So, what's the largest that you've printed your images? What's the
So
largest size?
my largest size is 130 centimeters. It
Okay,
can go bigger, but I haven't found anywhere or anyone who wants to have a
right.
print than that. Because essentially you need to mount it and then frame it. So once you've done that, it's huge.
Uh
Um,
huh. Uh huh.
but they can go so big.
Okay, so where have you only shown or had these purchased, or have your photographs only been alive in the UK, or where in the world are your pictures?
Yeah, so my pictures are all over the world. Actually, there's some people in France. I've got some people in London, Hong Kong. Lots of people from Hong Kong want the images because they've got a connection
Yeah.
um, to Hong Kong. So I actually have got a Hong Kong gallery
Oh, okay.
because I've photographed in Hong Kong quite a lot, and it's
Right.
usually the people who've got some sort of connection to Hong Kong who love the images there. And what that's when I realised that people want something more than abstract, especially
Yeah.
with photography.
Okay.
So that's, I think, what made me want to tell the stories behind the images,
Right.
and to tell people what they are. Most of them are not in glamorous places. That's why initially I didn't want to tell anyone, because
Okay.
the next one we're just about to go on has just all of them. It's essentially you're photographing a seat in a boat,
Right.
and you can't glamorize that really. So you want to, either keep it a secret because the subject isn't very interesting. But what
Uh
I
huh.
found out is that actually just the travel to these places, and not the actual thing, but the place itself is interesting. So like Chesil Beach, or Hong Kong, you can talk about Tai and how amazing Tai is, rather than going,
Right.
this is a bit of a fire hydrant in.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No. Absolutely. So okay. So I love that sometimes things happen that you can't anticipate, and you're just like, "What? That's kind of random." I love the randomness,
Yeah,
and so this is going to be another one of my really like long meandering sort of questions. So you try to figure the question out, okay? I leave it. I'm putting the onus on you. So I did this photo project where I did 350 photographs, right? Like more or less self portraits,
yeah.
and I was putting them up on eBay to sell.
Oh, cool.
And what was really weird was not that, well, it was weird that I was putting up self portraits on eBay, but what
Yeah,
was weird was that people from around the world would buy them, right?
yeah.
And I'd meet some random people, like somebody from Hungary or somebody from Australia or whatever, who'd buy the photo.
Oh, in Hong Kong.
Well, it was over the span of 6.5 years, so I was a little bit all over, but I was based in Hong Kong.
Okay,
So the question is, here's the question.
here we go.
So in doing these images and in showing them and in everything, has it happened that somebody pipes up and says, "Hey, you know what? I really resonate with what you've just done. I want this." And all of a sudden you have a connection with somebody you would have never anticipated. Is there somebody who stands out, in your photographic history where who's really connected with your work and who's come from the other side of the world or wherever that you thought, how did that make it there?
Well, I think there's lots of expats that come from Hong Kong, or have some sort of connection in Hong Kong. I think that's the key to selling the images, is that they actually are from Hong Kong, and they are of something specific. So it is a piece of Hong Kong essentially,
Mm-hmm.
rather than an abstract artist who gone. It's not really of anything. It's of their. It's abstract. But it's nothing essentially. It's what they've created, and I think what differs with my work and their work is that mine is abstract, but it is of a specific thing. It does exist, and I think taking a piece of Hong Kong back with you is something quite special.
Mm-hmm. On the other hand, like, don't you feel that what's really fascinating about your work though is that, like, as we're talking about this right now, we're having this conversation, and as we're speaking, I'm looking at your photo, and it's got this dark comic sort of aesthetic that I'm sort of reading into it, and in a way that opens it up for you to kind of have it be, it sort of transcends Hong Kong in a way.
Yeah,
And granted, I guess maybe the people who do end up buying it are the people who can connect it to something more
yeah.
localized. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think that's when the sort of the abstract comes together with something less abstract. Having that story behind it to sort of trigger things like they might have been to Tayo and go, oh, do you know what's really nice, but I don't want a landscape of Tayo, but just having this piece of Tayo is and something abstract that fits on their wall or with their color scheme. That's what I think the type of people who purchase the prints.
Okay. So in your training, have you done a lot of like art history, art theory, art, like, can you anchor it in some kind of tradition of art, or do you feel like that's outside of what you normally think about?
Yeah, well, not really. I I'm doing something that is very photograph. To me, it's very photographic. So I'm essentially, I like the colors. I see the composition. There's nothing that really like resonates in me. There's nothing more than that when I'm taking the photograph. I just
Hmm.
love that the composition, and I've
Hmm.
always been like that. I'm quite matter of fact. So I go, oh, I like that, and then people go, oh,
Okay.
why do you like that? I was like, I don't know. I like the reds and the greens and the yellows, I suppose.
Right.
But it's nothing more than that. I don't know if it should be. uh,
No, well, look, it's just how
yeah,
it manifests, right?
yeah, exactly. And I think it's not up to me. And the good thing about abstract is that even if I think it it looks like a samurai going through a snowstorm, someone else won't think that. So it doesn't matter
Hmm.
what I think. I just take the image, and I like it for whatever reasons I have, and then hopefully they'll like it, but
What
maybe for other reasons.
What's cool about the podcast is that because it reflects kind of my, I don't know, kind of random, like, oh, it's like in terms of how we met was just completely random.
Yeah,
And hopefully I can get your sister on, who I don't think I've ever met your sister,
yeah,
but you're describing before how you have this YouTube channel show where you're going around the world talking to people with film. Were there cars involved as well? Because in a way, you're going and you're still making photographic records, even though they're video.
yeah.
So that seems to be more. I mean, do you feel video is let? You can't really get too abstract with video because then it gets too I don't know, conceptual or whatever. But how does the storytelling, the visual storytelling that you need to use in video, like, do you think that these abstractions, like these abstract photographs, are just your way of saying, okay, this is a different part of my brain?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. I know. I've always photographed landscape photography, and it's just been. I've just focused more and more on things. I don't know. There's something about I wouldn't want a landscape photograph on my wall, even though I love that place
Hmm.
and I love taking it. For some reason, I don't really want it on my wall. I'd much prefer to have some art on my wall, but I would also like to have something photographic, as in photographic art. And
Right.
essentially, it's more about being able to put splashes of color within a space. I think
Right.
that's what I liked most about it, and how I can achieve that is by then photographing these abstracts, and then essentially they become generic, but also not generic because they now got a story behind them.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And to be fair, I mean, like, completely unique because I would never see anything like this anywhere ever,
yeah,
right?
they're
So
quite odd, aren't they?
yeah.
I've whenever I'm taking them, I always feel quite self conscious because you get people walking past and like, what the hell? And I'm like, on the ground, sorting out my tripod, and then photographing this corner of a door. And
Yeah.
if I was that other person, I would think I was mental as well. What is he doing? But what makes me feel better is that I'm creating something I'm really passionate about, and I know it will look cool. So
Nice.
I sort of try and get them out of my head because I know exactly what I would be thinking if I was them.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but yeah, it's what I really enjoy.
So what's the website that people can go see your other work?
So my other website is jeaphotography.co.uk.
Okay.
So this one is jeaphotography.com. But I thought I needed two websites because they're just so different.
Okay.
Because my abstract work is, it's just so different to photographing a wedding. I
Yeah.
don't think you'd get the same sort of person who'd want to, and maybe you would. I just don't know. I just think it's nice to put it separately.
Well, I okay. So let's. We're going to go to your next photograph, but before we do that, let me just kind of ask you a couple. Okay, so like I've done professional photography, and I
Mm,
know that when you're doing that side, and you're hired to come up with certain images and everything, the client, whatever, has a vision that may or may not be clear in their mind of what they want, and
Yeah.
you're there as somebody who fulfills that vision, as you know, like it's sometimes for better or worse. You give them what they want, and it's not necessarily something that you even connect
Yes,
with or
exactly.
feel. You
Yeah.
know,
You obviously have been a professional photographer.
but so then on the other hand, you have this other, and I can understand. Well, you want to have this other kind of channel where you can show your different work,
Yeah,
and
the
that's
creative channel, I suppose. Yeah.
yeah. So that makes perfectly good sense. But the issue is that when we're having this conversation, I've been looking at this image the whole time, and it begs it, like in my mind, everything, even the most abstract, even the most sort of absurd, arbitrary, whatever thing. I mean, the very fact that you've put it on the table to say, well, that's what I'm going to pull out of the world to say, like that's what I want to show, is a reflection of your internal thinking, your internal thought patterns. It's a reflection of your education, a
Yeah.
reflection of your all this stuff. So it's interesting and fascinating that of all the kind of image making that you've kind of matured into has been to create these highly non-literal
Yeah.
uh, images that qualify as photographs, but really they don't really signify anything.
No.
So what kind of person are you that, like, how do you feel about uncertainty and chaos and lack of clarity in your life outside of your work?
Yeah.
That's a question.
That is. I think I'm quite a simple person, and I don't.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I'm essentially. I don't think about all of those things.
Okay.
This has no like doesn't manifest into what I think at all. If you look at the next image, it'll be really bright and completely different.
Well, you know what? Let's use that as the segue for the next image.
Nice.
Shall we?
Yeah. Actually, this one's quite dark as well, isn't it?
Is it? I don't know. I don't know. Do you want to describe it? Why don't you use the words to paint a picture?
It's quite chaotic as well. Maybe I've sent you the wrong images that tell you the wrong thing about myself. They're
No,
all quite chaotic, aren't they?
they're
Uh,
all quite perfect.
well, this one is the one I was talking about earlier. This is a canoe in
Okay.
in Tayo.
Right.
And obviously, it's been dragged up and down into the water many times. That's why there's so many scratches on it, and it's obviously
Right.
been painted, over and over again
Yeah.
because it's been through a really, really hard life. And what I think I find really interesting is, I'm guessing all those things. I don't know.
It looks it.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. But that I've just come up with that. I'd assume that's what's happened. But what's interesting is that you can make up all these stories,
Hmm.
and just that the fact that you can make up whatever you want about an image is quite fun. And I
Yeah.
think quite a lot of it is actually rather than saying this is something about how I feel or what this is more about my personality. I think it's more about I like to, imagine what the story could have been.
Hmm.
There is storytelling behind it. It's just I'm allowed to tell whatever story I want.
Okay.
And so there's something interesting about that, I think. But yeah, I mean, I'm much less arty than you think I am. It is essentially I've seen a canoe and I like the contrast of colours,
Yeah.
and pretty much that's pretty much it. And essentially it's yeah, I just like the beauty of that. And there are compositional elements in it. There's
Yeah.
vertical lines, there's horizontal lines, there's a distinct subject with that red bit in the middle. So yeah, it's playing with my mind on how my mind works in terms of always trying to find a composition or
Right.
a photograph in things.
Well, okay, so here, okay, I'm going to jump in for a second.
Go for it.
So here we have a photograph again, as you said. There's no real perspective. It's just a very flat image. It's
Yeah,
kind of interesting. It's almost like archaeology, in which you're looking at different layers
yeah,
of paint, and you kind of go, okay, well, I can sort of tell this very like the under color of it. I don't know if it's wood or fiberglass,
yeah.
and on top of that was maybe white, and on top of that maybe black, and on top of that this sky blue, and this really attractive, just rich deep red, and it's you have like from the boat or the canoe being pulled in and out with the with the barnacles and the oysters or whatever, just scratching away at the paint.
Yeah.
You can see these like scratch marks and these like it's like this. It's if anything, I'd say the image before was softer, and the image before where I said, oh, I see like continents or whatever to be
Yes.
even softer was this one. This one seems to be a little, I wouldn't say harsh, but the colors are like you obviously have an appreciation for color theory and composition, even though I'm not talking about it in an academic sense. I'm talking about it as an intuitive sense, right? And then you reacting intuitively to these colors and just sort of composing the image. Sometimes, I mean, look, I'm not trying to psychoanalyze you. But it's like,
I mean, because I've never really thought of it like this, and you saying all this, all this stuff, saying, what, how have you, why are you taking these images? It's made me think. It's made me think about why I am taking the photos. I've never really thought about it. I've just got, oh, I like this. I'll photograph that. Oh, that'll look cool on a wall. And so yeah,
it's also look. This is a reflection of my upbringing and everything, right? So I grew up in Canada.
mhm,
My training or education or whatever is very it's of a certain time. So let's just say during the sort of the height of philosophical postmodernist theory and all this stuff in university, and then so that was kind of one of my anchors, and so part of my development was kind of like, well, and also as in my poetic and my own photographic development, like we have the signified, right? We have the image,
yeah,
and even though it's not patently obvious what you're signifying, what you're saying, I mean, just the fact that you've selected it, in my mind, in my how I see the world,
yeah,
is a curation of like of standing in that scene in Taio or wherever,
mm,
looking at the whole world in front of you.
yeah,
You decide to get really close and tight with a 70 millimeter lens on a tripod to
yeah,
meticulously photograph this splash and expression of color.
yeah,
But your everyday other side of your brain is photographing people in their, either in events or
yeah.
moments where it's like, just show me at my best. It's all up, like,
I think for me, it's an outlet, as you say. It's an outlet
okay.
for creativity. That's pretty much it. I've also wanted to that all of my stuff is, as you say, is not corporate, but it's for other people, and they're not printed out as fine arts. Essentially,
Hmm.
it's, and I think with this evolving patina, it can be presented on a wall as fine art.
For sure.
That's something that I haven't really done and have wanted to do. Most of my stuff can't be printed, and this, it's just a different process. Now I'm finding the perfect paper, in order to make these, stand out the best. I'm finding out what the best frame is, what the best mount combination would be, and it's just a completely different part of photography that I
Hmm.
didn't do for a long time, since doing my landscape photography when I was about 17 or 18. So I
Right.
think that's what it is that I just wanted something almost for myself, that I could print up massive, and and look at it, and each image is so different. If I sent you another
Yeah.
3 photographs, you would have said something completely different, and that's cool.
But what I love is that anybody who'd go through the library, if we call it or the gallery or the library of the Shooting It Raw
Yeah,
photographs, would see this and go, okay, hold on a second, this is so different. That, you know what? Let's say that was a question. How's that? Let's put a question mark at the end of that.
I think it's just as different as you do. I have been influenced by sort of a friend of a friend who did these shots in Hong Kong. Actually, not just Hong Kong, in China as well. And he had done these sort of photos of walls, essentially. Uh,
Hmm.
and at the time, I thought he's just photographing walls. I'm not interested in this at all. Um, and I don't know how I changed my mind. And now I think it's really cool. It's essentially like a little book. It's called Norman de Bracking. He's actually based in Hong Kong, and he's done it for a while. And I think he's got a gallery there somewhere.
Hmm.
So essentially, I didn't make up the idea, but what I really liked about it is that as you say, there's no rules. You can just go out there and photograph whatever you want. But when you're doing these abstract shots, you don't just go around with your camera and take a landscape 1 second and then take a portrait of someone else the next second. You go out specifically to photograph, these textures. So
Hmm.
instead of looking around and going, "Oh, this is nice," you are. I'm extremely sort of concentrating on every single little detail. I'm looking at every
Yeah.
wall. I'm looking at every door, and it's completely the opposite of what I usually do.
Right.
So that might be it. The fact that I'm not looking at light at all. Usually, I'm looking at light as a photographer. You're looking at light, and you're looking at you know if I put the bride there, that'll look good backlit. Or that'll
Right.
look
Right.
good with that blue door in the background, etc., etc. And I'm not doing any of that with these photographs. I'm purely looking for colors and textures. It's very specific of what I'm looking for. You don't want it too old, because then it's just gross.
Right.
You don't want it too new, because then it's boring. So essentially, I'm looking for dramatic images. I've always done that.
Yeah.
I think these images are dramatic in the sense. This one is very black and very dark, and
Absolutely.
potentially
Absolutely.
looks like when you have a 5-year-old and he comes back from the school, and he's been putting scary things, drawing scary things, and the teacher's like, your kid has got some has got some problems. And I can sort of see that now with how dramatic and how black it is. But
And the blood red. Come on, you can't get away from the blood red.
the blood red, yeah.
What
So
are you trying to confess to, man? What are you trying to confess?
maybe that's it. Maybe I'm an absolute sociopath, and I don't know.
You're perfect. You're perfect. I love it.
No, but yeah, I think that's why if you have a look at my website, some of them are neutral, some of them are really bright colors, and some of them are not. And I think it just completely depends on where I am, because the subjects are hard to find, and I
Hmm.
think
Hmm.
you need to have a specific requirements. They have to have um, some sort of compositional element. They need to
Sure.
have colors and lots of different contrasting colors. It can't just be, if this was just red and blue, it'd be boring.
But
But
John, here's what I think. I think it's kind of like even when you go out to photograph and you consciously think, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to make a photo for my series.
yeah,
You're also responding to what's actually out there. Unlike in painting, a painter can just create the composition. You
yeah,
go out and you sort of respond to the world.
sure,
And that the visual data that's coming into your brain and is being sort of filtered through your experience and your idea of I want to make this. You're also like of all the things that you see, suddenly something grabs your attention, and that attention, that moment, is kind of what you're capturing and then sharing with other people.
Yeah.
And so I would, I mean, I would hope that somebody listening to this podcast and this episode would be like, okay, what the hell are they talking about? Or what's so special? What's so, what are these photographs? And hopefully they will go and they will see the images and realize, oh, wait a second, photography can also do this. And it's great. I mean, I love it.
Do you like them?
No, you lunatic.
Because they are like, if I put two together, some people go, that is horrendous. That one, I don't want that on my wall. And then the next one, they'll be go, oh, that's really nice and neutral. That would look great in my
Well, that's the thing. Different people are going to respond very differently, right? So exactly. I just okay. I only have 3 images here, and within that 3, there's so many different reactions and responses, and they're interesting in themselves, and they live together. So I think, yeah, look, you're not going to be great. Not everybody's going to love everything,
yeah.
but there is definitely, like for me, the strongest was the first and the second really is strong to me.
Yep.
But I like this third one as well. So look, let's not even do that. I mean, like ultimately, it's not about me. It's about your process, but also how this creative expression is a kind of counterweight to your bread and butter.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And what's nice about it is also it's very accessible. Um, so I can just like take myself off for half a day and go and try and find them. And I think
Yeah.
it's almost like a treasure hunt essentially, and that's
Okay.
really fun as well. You don't know what you're going to find. There's no plan at all. You go to somewhere that is essentially you're hoping it's going to be something that I would be interested in. Whether it's
Yeah.
an old fishing village or somewhere that I would enjoy anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sort of have got these textures in mind and try and try and extract the character from that place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, I think you're probably right. I can go somewhere and just be like, do you know what? I don't know what I'm going to find, but it'll be really interesting to go down this little alley, see what's down there, or let's see what's
Yeah.
around. There might be some around there,
Yeah.
and it takes you into some very odd places. Again, it's all part of that adventure to try and find these. I think lovely sort of keepsakes of that place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it forces you to go to places that you wouldn't usually go. So you go down this back alley and you go, do you know what, this is pretty grim here. But then you go, oh, what's around that corner? That might be much better, and you might see something around there. And
Yeah.
lo and behold, you find something that is really interesting to photograph. And I think that's probably it. It's that sense of adventure and putting me into places where. Well, I go there anyway because I want to be photographing. I love to find that sort of the places that people don't usually go to.
Sure.
So essentially, that's what I love about it, and the images are just that the icing on the cake, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, look, another thing about this podcast is that the conversations go, like they go so fast in a way, right? Because we're speaking about moments in time, like 1/30th of a second or 1/60th or 1/100th of a second here, and then so they're just 3 images, and yet we could totally lose ourselves inside them.
Yeah, photography is so interesting, I think.
Yeah. So John, thank you so much for joining and for explaining your art, and hopefully if one person kind of listens to you and listens to me and goes like, okay, let's go check this out, and then they look, and then that catalyzes a kind of a new way of thinking of photography for them, suddenly they may become say, hey, you know what? Maybe I want to try doing this kind of photography myself. And
Yeah, they should do.
yeah. So any bit of advice you want to give somebody who wants to go down this path?
Yeah, well, I think just get your camera out and go on an adventure, and you have to be a bit specific. You have to, go somewhere that has got the history, has got something that could be a bit more, say, dilapidated. And yeah, once you're there, just have fun and see what you can find, and go into all the little crevices, go down all the back alleys, go into all the places that you wouldn't usually go if you're just the casual tourist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you find that you see the place a lot differently to everyone else who goes there, because you're looking at it in such a different way.
Yeah.
And of course, you haven't got your eyes closed. You're seeing the place as well. I mean, Tayo is epic. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
I just didn't choose to photograph, the fishing boats. I was in to photograph these.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get the best of both worlds, I think.
Fantastic. John, thank you so much. Good
Thanks,
man.
man.
Good man. I love it. Thank you.
No worries at all. It's lovely to speak to you.
Awesome, man. Okay, hopefully I'll see you in Tayo, or you'll see you in North London, or wherever it is. Oxford?
Yeah.
No. Where is it?
Oxford, yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
In South Africa.
Well said. Well said. Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.